much for joining today's special topic webinar, Liver Wellness, presented by the American Liver Foundation. My name is Carla. I'm the Director of User Engagement at NeedyMeds. And before we get started, I'd like to go over a few points that will help you make the most out of today's presentation. First of all, if you have questions, you can type them at any time into the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. Just know we will reserve answering questions until the end. If we don't have the time to answer your question, we'll follow up with you by email. Of course, we will provide the contact information for both NeedyMeds and the American Liver Foundation. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the NeedyMeds YouTube channel. And you can find copies of our PowerPoint slide decks and other handouts we thought you'd be interested in the handout section of your control panel. So let's get started with what is NeedyMeds for those of you not yet familiar with us. What you're looking at is our mission statement and a statement about how we achieve that mission. But simply put, NeedyMeds connects people to programs that will help them afford their healthcare expenses. And we do that free and anonymously through our website, needymeds.org, and helpline, 1-800-503-6897. And I really always like to put up a screenshot of our homepage because our website is the face of our organization. It gives me a chance to point out just a few things. And as you can see, it's full of information, so I hope you do take the time to check our website out further when time allows. For now, if you are looking for healthcare savings resources, you'll find those under the Patient Savings tab. I mentioned this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the NeedyMeds YouTube channel, and you can find a link to that on the top right of our homepage. Oh, there it is. I got ahead of myself. But you will find a link to it on that top right of the homepage with the rest of those social media icons. It's the third one from the left. And I hope you subscribe. That way you'll be notified when new webinars, videos, or presentations are added. I already clicked on that bottom right calendar of events, and that's where you can see what other webinars are coming up and register for them. So let's move on to why you're all here today, which is today's presentation about liver wellness by the American Liver Foundation. So first, before I introduce our guest, let me tell you just a quick statement about the American Liver Foundation. Simply put, their mission is to facilitate, advocate, and promote education, support, and research for the prevention, treatment, and cure of the disease. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest, Warren Hall. Warren, I was just about to say ALF, but I realize you may not know what I'm referring to. ALF, American Liver Foundation. So when the ALF, National Manager of Support Services, that's Warren Hall. He came to the American Liver Foundation with a background in education and counseling. And as you'll see with this presentation, both really do come in handy with these presentations, and certainly when he does his work on the helpline and with the foundation's other ongoing support services. Last year, the American Liver Foundation National Helpline assisted over 10,000 inquiries regarding liver health, liver disease, and related liver issues. Today, Warren's going to cover how the liver functions and the causes of and risk factors and treatments for the most prevalent liver diseases. So without further ado, and hopefully seamlessly, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic and the screen to Warren, so bear with us while he grabs that screen. And in the meantime, I will remind you that if you do have questions, you can submit them by typing them into that question section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And with that, Warren, I'll pass it to you. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the presentation. So, Warren, I'm not
I think
sure
I lost your audio. Oh.
There you go. You're popping back
Okay.
in now. Why don't you just give us a shout out, make sure we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Okay, thanks for your
Okay.
patience, everybody.
All right. Well, I'm so happy to be here certainly with my friend Carla. and all those wonderful folks over at NeedyMeds. It was so great what Carla just showed us, the NeedyMeds website with so much information and ways to help people. I know at the American Liver Foundation, we're always referring people over to NeedyMeds because so many of the contacts we get have to do with affording their health care or supplement to affording their health care. And so it's so great. It's a partnership that all of us at AOF really love, and I particularly. I've done a few of these in collaboration with NeedyMeds, and it's so terrific whenever we're able to do this. And so I'm happy to be here again today. I have a friend who teaches history, and I always made fun of him because I said he never had to prepare anything new. I said, when you're teaching history, history doesn't change, and so you must just teach the same thing year after year, semester after semester. And of course, he gave me a hard time about that. And he said, there's new research, there's new things about the past that come to light, and so believe it or not, history really can be updated, especially the way we teach it. I tell you that because I think the same is true when it comes to certainly our topic today of liver wellness. We say, all right, take care of your liver, eat right, and what else is there? What else is there to say? But there's research ongoing all the time. And so there's so many new things that are coming up, new ways to take care of yourself, certainly new ways to address illnesses that people have. And so that's why we update our liver wellness presentations and educational components to reflect so many of these newly researched and data that's coming out. One of those things I'll just tell you right off the hand is coffee. Now, many of us can't begin the day unless we've had our coffee or coffees in the morning. And recent research, not just research, but FDA approved research has shown that coffee is very good friend of the liver. And so who knew, right? A couple of years ago, we didn't even know that. And so that's why we've updated our liver wellness presentations with so much more and new information. And hopefully you'll enjoy this as we go along, and that we'll all learn a lot about this. Wellness is prevention. And the hope is that if we're taking care of ourselves, and in this case our liver, hopefully we'll never get to the disease part of it. But it's always good for us to update ourselves and to know what's really going on. So I'm really happy to be here with you today, and so so let's go here now. Um, let's see if I can do this properly on my screen. And let's see. Oops. Okay. I think I want to do it this way, right? And let's see. Yes. Okay. So here we go. As you see on our slide here, that there are so many people that are affected by liver disease. It really is very impactful in regard to health of so many people, and that's why wellness is a way of life. Most of us are concerned about our heart or our lungs, right? And so the liver is not necessarily something that is forefront in our mind unless we or a loved one or people we know begin to have problems. So it's important for us to pay attention or to have an understanding of the liver, how it works, and what are the things that can affect it. The liver is a remarkable organ, and we're going to get into a little bit. I find it fascinating, which is why for all these years I've been doing this. But as you can see, that so many people are affected by liver disease, and we even see liver disease on the rise now. You'll see there the people, viral hepatitis, ABC, we'll get into those. Alcohol-related liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, and liver cancer are all things that are affecting people around the country and around the world. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they were not aware of it. And so it's going to be important for us to pay attention to our liver, how to keep it healthy, and what are the influences about it. So here we are here now. What about the liver? So the liver is, as you can see in our in the pictures there. Okay, you can see where the liver is. It kind of looks like a football with a flat end. The average liver weighs about 3 pounds. And of course, depending upon the individual's height and weight, and that may vary slightly, but for the most part, it's all pretty much in that area. And you can see that it's located on our right side, just under our rib cage. And that's important because, the rib cage is able to protect it. Sometimes if we fall or if we happen to be in an accident or something like that, we have the ribs, which of course protect our heart and our lungs, but it also is a protection for our liver as well. And so that's, the miracle, if we want to say it, of our physiology and our bodies. That's one of those miracles. That's such an important organ that we have in our body, even has its own protection. And so many functions of our liver. Sometimes it's referred to as the refinery of our body because it does so much. And as you can see there, the liver acts like a filter. It filters certainly things that we eat and that we drink that make their way into our bloodstream, and the liver kind of acts as a filter for those things, trying to pull out the toxins or some of the things that are not so good, that are part of the food that we eat or things that we drink. And the liver actually filters it, pulls those things out so that they're not being absorbed into our system. Now, as you can see there, of course, eating and drinking is things that we know, but the liver also acts as a filter for the things we breathe in, and also things that get absorbed through our skin. When we're rubbing lotions and different types of creams on our bodies, we we actually want those things to be absorbed into our skin. But we have to realize that the things that get absorbed into our skin also make their way into our bloodstream. The things that we breathe, comes through our nostrils. It goes down into our lungs, and then in our lungs, the things that we breathe, certainly, of course, oxygen is what we need. But also, if there's any particles that are not so good, they can also get absorbed and go through our system, our blood system, and they too get filtered by the liver. And we're going to have a talk about that a little bit later on, especially for those who already have liver disease, and the importance of that. Okay, the liver helps to build muscle. Again, it takes nutrients. One of the things that we most know about is that the liver makes bile. Bile is that acid that is produced, that goes into our stomach and into our intestines, that helps to break down and to digest food. Often you'll hear the phrase biliary. So whenever you hear the word biliary being used, it's referring to bile or bile ducts, that are all part of what makes the liver so important and the work that the liver does. Uh, Bleeding, the blood cells, the red and white blood cells that come together to clot, so that we don't just bleed out, so that whenever there's a cut or a scrape or something, the liver produces what's needed to clot the blood to make sure that we don't bleed like that. There's also a germ killing element, as well as detoxifying these things that come into our body. And so that's why we refer to the liver as a refinery. You can see so many things that it does. So what happens in the case of liver disease? In the large pictures there, you see a healthy liver, right? It looks like a nice sponge, right? If you were to hold it, it'd be nice and squishy, which is exactly how we want it to be. After all, it is a filter. And that the smooth surface is very important for us as well. Now, liver disease itself takes a very long time to develop. Now, the only difference to that would be is if somebody has what we call acute liver failure. Acute liver failure occurs, let's say, if somebody takes an overdose of medications or drugs. That kind of shocks our liver into not being able to function. So that's called acute. Or let's say we're in an accident, and let's say our rib cage is not able to protect the liver, and so a trauma to our liver will affect its functioning. We call that acute liver failure. But that's the only case. Other than that, liver disease itself takes a very long time for it to develop. And here are some of the stages that we see. So we begin with that nice, healthy liver. And then as the liver begins to be damaged, we're going to see that that surface of the liver, and even inside a little bit, is going to start to get hard. It's because some of those areas of cells are going to begin to, instead of being nice and smooth, they're going to start to break apart. And as that continues to develop through the various stages, that's going to affect the liver's functioning. It's going to affect the filtering function. Think about a screen, right? You have a screen where you want to get the nice fresh air that comes in. But now imagine that screen is dirty. Just think about that parts of that screen are covered up. Now we're not getting that nice breeze as efficiently, and because of that, it's the screen is less effective. Well, so too for the liver, as the surface and the internal cells of the liver begin to harden, they begin to get scarred, or they begin to get some inflammation. It's going to affect the way the liver is going to work for us, and those are the beginning of liver damage. Now, well, those first stages there, we're going to get into the certain diseases, but first what usually happens is perhaps there's a little bit of fat that can develop on the liver or inside the liver. We call that fatty liver disease. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so what happens is that fat now that's surrounding the liver, the good news is that that can be reversed. However, if the fat is there for a long time, underneath that fat, it begins to irritate the surface of the liver, and that's when we're going to start to get that hardening and the damage to the cells. That's why if we have fatty liver disease, we want to address it right away. We need to get it reversed so that it doesn't create that damage. Now, as we move into another stage where there we have it listed as stage 2, what's happening now is that the liver is beginning to harden. Now, think of a sponge in your kitchen, right? As it dries out, it begins to get hard. Well, that's what happens with the liver. We call that fibrosis. That means that the liver is beginning to get hard. Your doctor might want to do what's called a fibroscan. A fibroscan is checking how hard the liver is, because as I said, it should be a nice squishy kind of a sponge, but with fibrosis, with liver damage, it begins to get hard, and that's also going to affect its filtering and the many other functions that occur. And then as we move on, once that severe scarring begins to happen, the liver itself begins to literally like crumble apart. That's when we get into that stages of cirrhosis, which cannot be reversed. That could lead to it can at times lead to liver cancer, liver failure, and then ultimately it can no longer sustain our lives. And so that's the stage we don't want to get to. But as you can see, this is the progress or the progression of liver disease that occurs. And again, it takes a long time, but it's progressive. So that means it's going to keep going. So how do we figure out what's going on with our liver when we go to the doctor? What are ways that we can try to figure out what, if anything's going on? The tough part about liver disease is that the nature of the liver, again, what makes it very unique is that the liver organ itself does not have nerve endings. And so what does that mean? It means that during our lives, we kind of beat it up, usually because of our lifestyle, right? What we're eating, what we're drinking, perhaps some medications we're taking. And the thing is that we're not feeling it because there's no nerve endings to say, ouch, something's wrong, right? We usually wait for pain as an indication, which is a great indicator that our body has to be able to say to us, uh-oh, something's wrong. But with the liver, we don't have that ability. And so therefore, what we have to do is we have to be screened for liver disease, which means you got to go look for it. Okay, instead of waiting for symptoms to occur, which by that point, as we said before, it takes a long time to progress, but it does. When it gets to the point that we start to sense something is wrong, it's usually advanced pretty far. And so we have to be screened, which means we want to go look for liver disease. So how do we do that? The most common way is what we know as liver enzyme tests, or LFTs. The way I like to describe this to people is, imagine a car's exhaust, right? A car, by virtue of the engine running, is always going to have exhaust, right? Now, certainly not electric cars. We're talking about the old-fashioned gas burners. Um, and so we know that when we see a car and then the engine is humming along, there's always a certain amount of, let's say, acceptable exhaust that's going to be coming out. Now, if we see a car that's blowing like black smoke out the tailpipe, our first thought is there must be something wrong with the engine. And so this is kind of the way that our liver enzymes work. Okay, by virtue of its normal functioning, there are going to be enzymes that are produced because of just by virtue of the liver functioning. Now you can see they're listed there: ALT, AST, ALP, GGT, all very long medical names, and all have a different role. However, for our sake, we just need to know that there are these liver enzymes. Most commonly, we'll hear about our ALT and AST. But what happens is, so that the doctor goes in, and when we do a blood test, we get the results and we see that there's an acceptable level, right? We know that as values. We know that from other blood testing we do, there's acceptable values. But what happens is, if the amount of those enzymes are outside of those values, if they're elevated, just like that car blowing the black smoke, we know that something's wrong. Now, what normally happens is, if you go in and, let's say all things being equal, you're basically pretty healthy, no other issues, you're not in a high risk group. What the doctor may say to you is, okay, your enzyme levels are high. Let's wait about maybe 8 weeks or so, about 2 months, maybe 3 months. During that period, watch your diet, watch what you're eating, make sure you're eating good, healthy, nutritious food, and then we'll go back and we'll test those enzymes again. If you go back and the levels are back normal again, the doctor may say, okay, that's good for now, and so we'll wait to your next appointment to monitor the situation. If, however, you go back after that time period and you watched what you ate and drank and all that stuff, and your levels are still elevated, then the doctor's going to say, all right, there could be something wrong. Now, the thing about the liver enzyme tests, these blood tests, is that they don't indicate what is wrong. Okay, they don't, by virtue of, say, which one is elevated, one's elevated, the other is not. For the most part, they don't tell us what is wrong. It just says that something may not be right here. And that's why the doctor will do the imaging tests. Okay, and you'll see that the next section down there, imaging test. So in this case, with a CT scan, ultrasound, MRI, that actually gives us a quote unquote look at our liver, because most liver disease is going to be visible. Think back to that slide we showed before where we saw the nice smooth liver, but now the enzymes are elevated, something may not be right, and so now we take a look at the liver itself. And what those imaging tests can show is, it can show some fat around the liver. Okay, that's extremely common. Or it might show maybe a little bit more damage. There might be now some inflammation. And so things with the liver, it's not nice and smooth and squishy as we said before. The fibroscan is used, as I said. That doesn't give us so much of a look at the liver, but it tells us the hardness of it. What it does is it sends out these pulses, and by the timing of how quick they go out and come back, that's how the fibroscan is able to check and to see, is the liver getting hard now? That's a problem, and so we don't want that to happen. And so what'll come next, and we see liver biopsy. Now, the thing about liver biopsy, is that it's usually a pretty much of a last resort. Um, the liver biopsy is used when a doctor wants some really specific information about your liver, or if there's certain types of illness such as autoimmune hepatitis or PBC, where they really need that piece of liver to determine or to confirm what they believe to be the case. Usually liver biopsy is held off until the very end. The reason, it's invasive. And so doctors don't want to be invasive. They never want to go inside our bodies because there's always although the biopsies, of course, like many things these days, are very are very I want to say successful, but they do what they got to do with no problems. But there's always that kind of a little risk there, and so that's why doctors will always hold off until it really has to be done to do the liver biopsy. Okay, and so these are the things that we would do as part of what I said, that screening, that going to look to see if we have liver disease. Enzyme tests, they should be a part of your natural annual physical, or if you go every 6 months like I do, you go and you check those enzymes, and then if there appears something not quite right, then we may get into some of that other testing. Okay, so that's really important. I just have one slide for that, but hugely important because of the fact that, as I said, liver disease can be silent. It could be happening, we don't know it, and so we got to go look for it, and that's why that kind of testing there is so important. Okay, so what causes liver disease? Now we go before, and of course, we all know what that one thing is going to be when you people, and there's still that stigma, unfortunately, is that if somebody has liver disease, everybody says, oh, they must drink a lot. You'll see that we have that on the list there. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of the work that we do at the Liver Foundation is we're trying to get away from that stigma. Okay, because to be honest with you, yes, extensive alcohol use does damage the liver, but so do a lot of other things, probably the others even more so. As you see there, viruses. Boy, we're certainly hearing a lot about viruses now, right? And so the with the liver, the main viruses that will tend to affect the liver are hepatitis A, B, and C. Now, we're going to get into those a little bit more specifically in a little while, but when we talk about viruses that affect the liver, we're going to talk about those hepatitis A, B, and C. Genetics. Okay, so this is something, remember what I said before, is that if you're generally healthy, and your liver functioning tests, the blood tests are fine. That's great. But if you're somebody who knows that in your family there's a history of liver disease, then you're going to want to be a little bit more on top of having those things checked just a little more than the average person. That's why whenever we go to a new doctor, right, we have to fill out all those forms, mostly having to do with family history, right? Your parents, your siblings, great grandparents even, right? Because the doctor wants to know what might run in your family. Okay, what are the things, because unfortunately, along with our good looks and our talents and things like that get passed from generation to generation, our eye color and hair color, unfortunately sometimes some of the negative things can get passed on as well, and that's what through genetics. And so if you have a family history of liver disease, you want to be on top of that, because that is what could lead to having liver disease yourself, even through no fault of your own. You didn't do anything wrong. However, because it's in the genes, that's what's going to happen. Autoimmune disease. Now, as we know, autoimmune disease is when our body's immune system, okay, which jumps into action when something foreign comes into our body, such as a virus. Yeah, our autoimmune system says, uh-oh, we have an invader here. Here's an intruder. And the antibodies go right after that foreign element and tries to kill it. Now, the problem with autoimmune disease is that the body begins to identify some parts of its own self as being something foreign or something dangerous, and it begins to attack that. And so in autoimmune disease, especially with the liver, it means that these antibodies are identifying some part of our liver, usually the bile ducts or something like that, as being foreign to our body, and begins to attack itself. And so, unfortunately, in that condition, that could create some problems for our livers. Alcohol use, we just spoke about that. We'll talk a little bit later about why that is. But here's the big one here is now diet and obesity. Now, what can happen is the fact that, when we view body fat, right? When we look at our bodies and we see fat, we also have to remember that the fat goes inside as well. And so, therefore, if we're carrying around a lot of weight with us, some of that fat is also surrounding some of our internal organs. And as I said, when it comes to the liver is supposed to be a nice squishy sponge. It's beginning to cause problems there. All of us have some amount of body fat, and all of us have a certain amount of liver fat too. There's an acceptable level. However, when it begins to cause some disorders and some problems, we need to get that checked out. Now, the thing here to be reminded of is that skinny people can get liver disease too. Okay, so it's not only about obesity, although obesity is certainly an indicator, but anybody can be prone to getting liver disease, even a skinny. It's funny to say a skinny person has fatty liver disease, but it happens. Okay, and this is something where the next one we're finding quite a bit more about, and that is that our body's reaction to medications. We're not just talking about street drugs as listed there, but also some medications we may have been taking for a long time, or some toxic chemicals. As I mentioned before, some of the things that we breathe in, or if we work closely with chemicals, perhaps there's some workers that work with chemicals and they didn't always take proper precautions. Some of those toxins can make their way into our bodies, and the filter is really the liver trying to filter those is really going to be prone to being damaged. So these are general high-level causes of some liver disease. Now, the next slide here, I know that's it's very wordy, and hopefully later on you'll have a chance to look through these. But these are just some quick things we want to point out. The first word there, hepatitis. Now, we have to remember anything that begins with HEPA, HEPA, anything that begins with HEPA, it means liver, okay? And hepatitis means inflammation of the liver. Now, this is not to be confused with viral hepatitis. We're going to talk about that in a second, okay? That viral hepatitis, ABC, is caused by a virus, okay? But if somebody just has a liver that has inflammation, you'll hear that referred to as hepatitis. But we always have to ask, is it viral hepatitis or is it just hepatitis of the organ itself? And so we want to watch for that. Some other phrases here, acute infection. The word acute means with any type of an illness that it was quick. As I said before, if somebody they may have a healthy liver if they take an overdose of some kind of pills or drugs or something like that, they can have acute liver failure. Okay, that means it came on very quickly. Or the next one, chronic infection, means that the body's been dealing with a problem for a very long time. Antibody, again, we're hearing a lot about antibodies these days. Okay, so what happens, as I mentioned before, is that when our immune system recognizes something foreign in our bodies, it sends out these antibodies that go to attack it. Okay, and so the antibodies are kind of like the soldiers, the protectors of our body that go out to try to keep us healthy. An antigen is almost like the antibody in that this is what your immune system creates when there is some sort of a foreign body with us. And it may not assist in the actual killing of it, but it's an antigen it's produced that lets, if you take a blood test, it would kind of let you know what disease might be present. And so, some testing will do, it'll check for antigens. That'll be true in the viral hepatitis area we talk about. And finally, vaccines. Okay, vaccine is something that we're given to help so that we don't even get a disease to begin with. Okay. So here we see viral hepatitis. Okay, this is caused by a specific virus, and I could see the three that we know here in the United States that are the most prevalent. ABC, uh, A and B have been known for a long time. C is only since about the mid 1980s into 1990s. Hepatitis C was discovered as part of the whole HIV research that was done to figure out what was causing HIV and AIDS right back in the 80s. Prior to that, if you had a virus that was not A or not B, they simply called it non-AB. Okay, but then the scientists did their studies and decided that this was a new type of virus called hepatitis C. As a matter of fact, most recently, one of the researchers who discovered this was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Was awarded that prize because of the importance of that finding, hepatitis C. So quickly across, you can see how is it spread. Usually infected particles, as you'll see there, of fecal matter or some other types of transmission. You know, that happens, let's say if you've been to either a third world nation, right? If you were somewhere where the food, the water is not really being purified, you can get hepatitis A that way. Or, you know, if you've been to restaurants, and you know, when you go to the bathroom and you'll see a sign that says, employees must wash their hands before going back to work. Now, these days, all of us are certainly doing that. But, you know, back before the pandemic, there was always that sign because those who are working with food have to make sure that there's no passing on of any of this type of thing that could cause hepatitis A. It's acute because it happens quickly. But once we've had it, our body clears it, we don't get infected anymore. Okay. And yes, there is a vaccination for this, so you don't get it to begin with. Hepatitis B is a little bit more involved because of the fact that it's passed on through the various body fluids of someone who has that contamination. And so what can happen is again, through intimacy or some other ways that this virus can be passed on to other people. Then once we have it, both A and B make us sick like the flu. We get really sick in that way. But again, the body's own immune system can take care of hepatitis B. As we see there, we're only infected once because then the antibodies that our system produces can then fight off. Now we're ready for it, right? It's looking for it in the future. And so if it were ever to come back, our body can take care of it. And yes, there is a vaccine nowadays, so we don't even have to deal with it. Now, let me go back to the acute or chronic. 95% of hepatitis B infections are acute, which means you get it right away, body clears it right away. But as you see, there's about 5% of adults who will get what's called a chronic infection. And what that means is that their own immune system is not strong enough to try to deal with this. And so because of that, you'll have to take medications. And what those medications do, unfortunately, they don't cure it yet. But what it will do is it will stop the virus from causing any further damage to the body. So if you think about it, it's almost like this medication puts like a sealant around the virus so that it can't affect our liver or other body systems. Okay, and then finally, hepatitis C, the most, let's just say, the most complicated of all of them, hepatitis C. The thing about hepatitis C, blood to blood. Okay, so it's very difficult to happen, but to get it, but the exposure can happen through direct blood to blood contact. The problem with it is that although many people, their own body system, their immune system will clear it, unfortunately, most people will not. And that's why they will get what's called a chronic infection. Thankfully, now there's medications. It used to be very difficult. Now the new medications can clear it, cure it in 8 to 12 weeks or so. You've probably seen all the commercials for this, Mavorite and Harvoni and so many others. And so thankfully we have that. The other thing about Hep C is that you can get it more than one time. So when your body is cured or clears the infection once, it doesn't mean that you'll never get it again. Okay, so this is what we're trying to figure out about COVID, right? What kind of antibodies, or what does this do for our immune system? And you'll see with hepatitis C, unfortunately, we can be exposed a second time after that initial exposure. Unfortunately, no vaccine just yet, but we know it's on the horizon, but we don't have it yet. So I just spoke really pretty much about these. I don't want to go too more into in depth discussion about these, but you'll have access to the slides and you'll be able to read some of this here about what can be done about if any type of testing or treatment is needed. Hepatitis B, same thing, we just went through that. And what the testing is all about. The thing I want to say about hepatitis C in regard to testing is that there's two types of testing. So if somebody goes to a clinic and gets the rapid test, okay, the rapid test is just going to say that you have the antibodies, right? And so a rapid test is not going to say you have the active virus. Okay, so if you get a rapid test and you show that you have the antibodies, you then have to go for a second test. It's known as an RNA test. The RNA test is going to say to us that you either have the active virus or that you don't, that you just have the antibodies because your own immune system fought it off. Okay, so a rapid test, if it shows positive for antibodies, you need that second test to figure out if you have the live virus. If you have the live virus, then you get that medication that can bring you to a cure. Interestingly enough, as of late, we're seeing that a lot of people who are the baby boomers are showing up now with hepatitis C. And why is that? It's because of the fact that for many of these people, they may have had blood transfusions, they may have gotten blood prior to hepatitis C being identified in the blood supply, and so they're showing up with it. So testing, everybody should be tested. Everybody over 18 should be tested. Certainly women who are pregnant should be tested, and anybody who's in a high risk group. And so somebody who might use some street drugs or things like that. We're not making any judgment statements here, but everybody should be tested for that. So that's viral hepatitis. I know I'm running out of time here, so I want to move along a little more quickly here. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I talked about this before. What is it? It means that there's extra fat that's building up around your liver, right? Suffocating that nice sponge that we have there. But if you look all the way down to the bottom here, the best news is that NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is reversible. Okay, if you detect that early, get on that healthy diet and lifestyle, and you can reverse it. The caution we always tell people is that once your liver has been gotten fatty liver, even if you reverse it, your liver is still going to be susceptible to that. And that's why we always talk about lifestyle change. Okay, it's not just a diet for a few months to get rid of that fat. This has to be an ongoing thing. How does fatty liver happen? Remember I said before, it's not just body fat, although that is certainly one of the conditions. But you'll see that people who have diabetes, some heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, right? And then there are certain drugs that can lead to that too. And so these would be the folks that we say are in a high risk group for that. And so how do you treat it? Best thing is diets. Watch the medication you're taking. Talk to your doctor about that, and be very, very careful with the use of alcohol, because that is what can happen with that. Again, I don't have time to go through all of the nutritional things. We don't have a specific. People say, what about keto, or what about South Beach diet? All those types of things. We don't recommend any of those because you have to have balance. The one thing we will say is that Mediterranean diet, that Mediterranean style of eating, is going to be very important. The other thing we do is we mention that people who um, are able to should contact a certified dietitian, because a certified dietitian will be able to work with you. The information we have, the information on the screen there, that's very general. But you need to go and say what is good for you, depending upon, again, your body size, your weight, comorbidities, other things that are going on. Here's some information about alcohol use. What's the problem with alcohol drinking? The problem with alcohol is that our liver can only process about one drink an hour. Now, and then what does a drink mean? How many? What is an actual drink? And you'll see now the screen that we have here. It's less than what we think, which is always the case, and so therefore you'll see that in an hour, this is the only amount of alcohol our body can be able to process. When we binge drink, that means that we're drinking a lot more than this. That's when the damage to the liver happens. And for people who binge drink or drink more than this over a certain period of time, that's going to begin to cause the damage. And so you have to be extremely careful about that. The other thing we're learning a lot more about, drug-induced liver injury. Now, we're not just talking about drugs. We always think of street drugs, right, when we hear that word drug. But no, we're talking about even our own prescription medications. People have been taking the same medication for many, many years, didn't realize that that medication was creating some liver problems. And so we should immediately talk to our doctor. The most recently now, because we're aware of this, many new drugs that are being manufactured, as well as some of the other older drugs that have been around, have been reformulated so that they don't affect our liver, but they still can. The average person, has to be careful of over-the-counter medications, the things that doctors not recommending for us, but maybe television is recommending, or Dr. Google is is recommending for us. Supplements, right? These commercials make us think that we all need supplements, and just keep in mind, supplements are called supplements for that reason. We should try to get all of our vitamins and our minerals from real food. Only if our doctor says, listen, your body is not getting enough vitamin C, only then should we take a supplement. Okay, so we should not take these things in our own hands because we saw an ad, or we got a coupon, or some beefed up guy on TV says to do this. You have to be very careful, and also be very, very careful of anything claiming to be a liver cleanse, or anything that claims to be something that is going to help our liver to heal itself. The liver does fine with really good nutritious food. So stay away from all that. Stuff does is it gives you diarrhea and says, oh, look, your liver's cleansing. It's not. As you'll see here, acetaminophen, that was found in all different types of medication, over-the-counter drugs. You want to be really careful about that. Okay, so those were the main things. I'll just finish up here now with what are some other lesser known, but certainly diseases that are out there. Autoimmune hepatitis. I mentioned this before, right? This is when our own body begins to attack our liver. And why does this happen? We really don't know. It's probably in the genetics, but that's a liver disease. Biliary atresia, that's something that happens in infants. Again, the reason unknown, but and then you'll see hemochromatosis, PBC. That's one that's very common in women, but also men get this. It's also an autoimmune disease, as well as PSC. These diseases have their own ways of being detected. For these, a simple scan, CT scan, ultrasound may not discover them. These might need that biopsy or special blood test to look for the antibodies. So finally, how do we know we have liver disease? Remember what I said before? Don't wait for symptoms. Be checked, be screened every year, because by the time you begin to get symptoms, the disease is probably right along. Because the liver is part of the digestive system, you're going to see probably changes in your digestive system. Okay, that might be an indication. Or the other one is that yellowing, discoloration of the eyes and skin. That's because of the fact that the bile that's being produced now when the liver is damaged, the breakdown of liver cells or the amount of bile being produced is going to be out of whack, and then that creates that yellowing of our skin or of our eyes that we will see, that will indicate something's wrong. But my caution with that is don't wait for the symptoms, because the liver disease progresses over a long time. The nature of our liver is that we don't know it, and once we do have symptoms, we're going to have something that we want to deal with that we didn't need to. Okay, and our last slide here, there's all the different places you can go to for more information. Our helpline, which is actually a big part of what I do at the Liver Foundation. People call us and online chat with us, email us, and we'll get you some the information that you need as well. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, a lot of it updated, new with our new research, but hopefully this was informative for you, and at least as a starting point. If you're not someone, if you just came on here to see about wellness and things like that, hopefully you know what to look out for. If you're somebody who is dealing with liver disease, hopefully this gave you some further insights into that. Okay, so I'm glad I was able to present this to you. And Carl, I think we're going to see now if any of our folks out there may have any questions that I could assist with.
Absolutely, we will. And Warren, thank you so much for that very thorough and enthusiastic presentation. It's really a wonderful opportunity to have the American Liver Foundation host webinars for the NeedyMeds audience, because it gives you a sense of the extensive breadth and scope of the information they have. But what I always say is, more importantly, all of their representatives, and Warren demonstrates this perfectly, are so enthusiastic and knowledgeable about the topic. And I think, again, really importantly, they break the information down into pieces that I can understand, we can all easily understand, and simple steps that we can take in our lives to improve our liver health.
Right.
I am, as Warren said, the questions are coming in, and I'm going to get to those in a moment. In the meantime, I want to remind everyone that NeedyMeds is here as a source of support if you are having trouble affording any of your healthcare expenses. If you are, check out that patient savings tab that I pointed out in the beginning of the presentation, or reach out to our call center counselors. Here are some other upcoming webinars that I hope you join us for. Monday is that overview webinar for NeedyMeds. So if you're interested in learning more about us and the resources we have and how to find what you need, join us for that Monday overview webinar. We'd love to have you. And I want to go ahead and leave up the American Liver Foundation contact information, as well as NeedyMeds. I do want to stress also, Warren did cover a lot of information with this presentation. So remember, a copy of his PowerPoint slide deck, as well as two other handouts, are available in that handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. So go ahead and take advantage of downloading those so you can refer back to these and share them as well. I also want to say that, as you know, the NeedyMeds and the American Liver Foundation is partnered for a while now, and they they return throughout the year to do different webinars for us. Since the beginning of the year, in addition to liver wellness, Warren's colleagues have also done special topic webinars on two other topics that he touched upon on his presentation: alcohol and your liver, and the ABCs of viral hepatitis. So if you're interested in learning more about those particular liver issues, check out the NeedyMeds YouTube channel to find those previous presentations. They're updated, they are from this year, so check those out. So let's get to some of those questions coming in. And the first one, and I'm glad somebody asked this, because it's so timely and important and probably on a lot of people's minds. Will my liver disease make me more vulnerable to getting COVID? That's a
Oh,
good question, and
yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion you've been asked this before, Warren. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that to you.
Yes, yeah, this is so important. We have gotten many inquiries through our national helpline. Through the pandemic, we've learned a lot, and I think the general public has learned a lot about virus, right? We've learned about testing and antibodies and all that kind of stuff. But specific for our audience, people are wondering, what does COVID mean if I have liver disease? Now, as I said before, the research is ongoing. When we first were encountering COVID, there wasn't an understanding of what it affected, because it's considered more of a respiratory virus. Okay, so people who had heart disease, people who had lung disease, emphysema, it was really affecting them. But what we began to notice was that when people went into the hospital for this and those liver enzyme levels were tested, remember I discussed that, what they were finding was people with COVID were having increased liver enzymes. Now that was alarming because the concern was, oh my goodness, is COVID affecting the liver, right? Remember, the enzyme levels don't tell us what's wrong; they just say something might be. But what it seems is that given the amount of medication and new medication that people with COVID were giving, it was almost giving, it was increasing those liver enzyme levels because the liver, let's just say, was not used to either that much of a medication, and it was affecting the liver's functioning. Thankfully, it seems that it was in the short term, just as those people were taking that, and it seems that the people, those enzyme levels after a while were returning to normal. So hopefully, again, the research is ongoing. We don't know exactly yet, but that is what it seems like might be happening. But what we tell the folks who call us concerned about it is, if you already have liver disease, you don't want anything complicating it, okay? Even though COVID may not, excuse me, have a direct effect on your liver disease, um, but at least you should protect yourself in all ways possible so you don't get it, because you don't need a complicating factor. Having liver disease does not make you more susceptible to getting it, but if you already have a disease, COVID is just going to complicate matters even more so than it's complicated already. So hopefully, if you have any sort of disease, take all the precautions, wear the mask. Can't say that often enough, right? Wash the hands. We want to get that virus away from us. Try to be careful with social distancing. Do all those things the CDC is telling us, and you'll be good. But as we said, if you have liver disease, you don't want it, because really still so much is not known.
So important. Thank you so much, Warren, and thanks for that question. And I think
Yeah.
not it demonstrates something also really important, which is Warren had touched upon this previously, when he chatted in the beginning about his friend that teaches history and said, "But there's nothing new to talk about." I really thought that was a good point that your friend made. That, well, first of all, we shed new light on things, and
Yep.
but I think what you said was really important. That sometimes people feel like, well, I know about my liver, I know how it works.
Right.
And maybe people are surprised to hear that you really need to actually stay up to date with
Yes.
new ways to be to keep your liver healthy. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that a few years ago there was no such thing as a Hep C cure, and now
Right.
there's actually medications available. So I
Right.
think that really
Yes.
drives the point home that, as Warren said, this is the answer for now, but stay tuned as more
Right.
research comes in, because the ALF will have, again, that's the American Liver Foundation.
Right.
They will have more information, and it
Right.
gives me an opportunity, since we're talking about COVID, to let everybody know that a couple of months ago, NeedyMeds, under that patient savings tab, we did add an entirely new section called the COVID-19 Resource Center. We're
Hmm.
happy that we were able to add it. We're sad that we had to, but we're
Right.
happy that it's there. And it is a destination on our website that will help people struggling with their healthcare expenses, or struggling with financial burdens due to the pandemic.
Right.
One other quick resource I do want to take a moment to point out is this is actually October is Talk About Your Medicines Month.
Mm.
At NeedyMeds, we are honoring that through our Be MedWise program. I hope you check out bemedwise.org because it has tons of information on the safe and appropriate use of medicines.
Mm.
But this year's Talk About Your Medicines website, it's talkaboutyourmedicines.org, is dedicated to the theme of medication adherence. And it
Mm.
talks about how medication adherence is crucial. And I think that that's important to keep in your mind when we talk about liver disease as well. As we said, there's now, for example, medication available for hepatitis C. So adhering
Right.
to a medication schedule is going to be important. But beyond that, anybody that's taking medication, which is most of us,
Mhm.
you should check out the talkaboutyourmedicines.org
Mhm.
website. So with
Mhm.
that, let's get to another question you probably get a lot, Warren.
Sure.
Another question coming in is my liver blood test showed high numbers for the first time. Is
Right.
this something I should be worried about?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, kudos to that person that they got their liver enzyme levels checked. As I said, everybody needs to do that. Um, and also the fact that it used to be that it might not have been a part of our usual like annual physical or whatever. Now it seems to be added now as common to that blood panel. But everybody should ask to be sure their doctor is going to do that for us. So having said that, uh, as we mentioned before, the usual procedure now, if somebody is not in high risk group, so if the person who asked the question, if you're not in the high risk groups that we talked about, if maybe weight is not an issue, if there's no family history, alcohol use is not an issue, medication use, then what would normally would happen is again the doctor would say, let's wait a few weeks, and in that time watch your diet. And, let me say a word about that because what happens is, I think, is that when our doctor says to us about watching our diet, losing a few pounds, many of us roll our eyes and we say, oh, they always say that. And what happens is people leave the doctor's office and they forget that part of it and they do nothing. When it comes to the liver, um, you know, nutrition is the treatment. Nutrition is the prevention. So instead of being given a shot or a pill, the doctor telling you to watch what you're eating is giving you the thing to do. Unfortunately, he's not injecting salad into your system or anything like that. But keep that in mind. And when we talk to doctors groups, we're telling them to please be more adamant about especially liver, especially fatty liver. Be adamant that the person knows that this is serious because that little bit of fat around the liver, over time, that can be literally deadly. So for that person, no need to get upset or crazy. Just follow the good diet, etc. Go back, be retested, and then as we said, if it goes back to normal, everything else being equal, you're good. If they're elevated again, then those an imaging test of some kind, which are no big deal. They rub the thing around your stomach there and literally take a look at your liver to see if anything's going on, and then they'll take it from there.
Fantastic. And again, I bet that's a question the American Liver Foundation gets all the time. And again,
Yes.
don't forget, you're looking at it on your screen. They do have a national helpline. So take
Yes.
advantage of those experts answering the phone. Another
Right.
question coming in, and I'm kind of excited because I think obviously you need to answer this, but I think I think I could give a little bit of a response.
Mhm.
The audience member is asking, what's the difference between NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic, right, fatty liver disease,
Right.
and NASH, which is
Right.
non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. And I
Yes.
thought it's just an extreme version of non-alcohol fatty liver disease. Is that right?
Yes. So the difference between fatty liver and NASH is inflammation. So what that means is that the fat that has been around and in some cases inside, a test might say infiltration. That means that not only is the fat outside, but it has infiltrated. It's gone into the liver as well. What happens is that begins to irritate the liver itself, and that irritation is now beginning to cause inflammation. And the inflammation, once that is present, that's when the doctors will say this has progressed to NASH. Now, not everybody is going to go into NASH with that inflammation, but but for those who it does, is that's going to add another complication to things. Now, still, even in that stage, in the early stage of NASH, there can be some reversal that can be done, again, only through diet. Unfortunately, they're trying to work on some medications to help this. But right now, it's all about, remember, nutrition's the treatment, that can be reversed. But NASH means that now there's inflammation that is occurring. What can happen with NASH is there can be a sensation felt in the area of the liver, and the reason for that is, as I said before, the organ itself doesn't have nerve endings, so we don't feel that. But with the inflammation, that can begin to affect the area around the liver. The liver sits in a little pocket there. We're not just a bag of bones and a bag of organs. Everything has a little pocket, and our bodies are designed perfectly to handle these things. But that little cavity around the liver can begin to get inflamed. That's when we can begin to feel it. But as we said before, once we begin to have a symptom of liver disease, it means it has really progressed, and so we want to try to avoid that.
Thank you so much. That was a great question, and important to
Yeah.
make that distinction.
Yes, for sure.
So, yeah. So, Warren, a huge thank you for taking time out of your day to share your expertise with the NeedyMeds audience, and a big thank
Right.
you to our audience for joining and participating today. I'm sure you're all super busy. Please know we do appreciate your time, and we hope to see your names pop up at future webinars. In the meantime, you will get a recording of today's presentation, but we will work to convert it into a video to be posted to our YouTube channel. And I do recommend staying in touch with the American Liver Foundation. If you have questions, reach out to the national helpline. Check out the previous webinars they conducted for NeedyMeds on our YouTube channel, and stay tuned to get a recording of today's presentation. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Thanks again for taking the time to join us. Stay safe, can't get the words out. Stay safe, third time's a charm, and healthy, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thanks, Warren, and thanks to our audience. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.